my fault. So I want to start with a story. It's kind of an old story. You may know it. But this is the story of Senator John Stone. So after a glorious life, a very productive life serving our nation in Congress for over 50 years, Senator John Stone died. And as he approached the gates of heaven, he met St. Peter, and St. Peter said to him, "Well, Senator, you've done such great work, passing great legislation that helps so many people, but at the same time, you were ruthless and merciless in your dealings with other people, and you destroyed many lives. So I'm baffled, but I'm going to let you choose. Do you want to spend eternity in heaven, or do you want to spend eternity in hell?" And the senator, being a very deliberative person, he says, "Well, St. Peter, why don't I just look around a little bit and see what each of them is like, and then I can come back with my final decision." And St. Peter says, "Okay, come on in and look around heaven for a while." And so Senator Stone goes into heaven, and he walks around, and he's kind of losing his footing on these streets of gold, because that's kind of slick, you know. But there are angels playing harps on clouds, and it's all very quiet and very peaceful. And he says to himself, "This is kind of boring. Hey, I'll go take a look at what hell looks like." So he goes back to St. Peter and he says, "Well, let me see what hell's like." And St. Peter says, "Okay, there's the elevator." So he gets on the elevator and he goes down, 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 down. And the doors open, and it's a beautiful sunny day. He's on this gorgeous golf course. All of his friends are over on the putting green. They wave, "Hey, John, how you doing? Come on over." And this very charismatic character comes up. He says, "Hello, John. I'm Satan. How you doing today? It's good to have you here." And John says, "Well, this is really nice. This is the kind of place I could spend eternity in." So he gets back on the elevator and goes up and 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 up. And he walks up to St. Peter and he says, "Well, I think I've decided hell is the place for me." And St. Peter says, "Okay, you know the way." And he gets on the elevator and goes down, 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 down. And the doors open, and it is roasting hot. There is the smell of burning sulfur in the air. All of his friends are chained to rocks, being whipped by demons, and this very evil, red-faced, horned creature comes up to him and says, "Welcome to hell, John." And John says, but what happened? What about the golf courses and all my friends and this wonderful, what happened? He says, "Well, John, you voted." Sorry. So when the United States was formed 236 years ago, a new form of government was introduced to the world. The Declaration of Independence was heavily influenced by the liberal philosophy of John Locke, and the Constitution bears a striking resemblance to the great law of peace of the Iroquois Confederacy. But both of these documents seem to declare the purpose of government to be that of protecting the freedom of citizens to live a life in pursuit of happiness. It held that every man should be able to make decisions for himself and his family. The new government puts its faith in the collective wisdom of the citizenry to guide its leaders. At least that's how we remember it. In fact, there were, in the early days of our republic, those who advocated the leadership of a more qualified class. In colonial Virginia, for example, only white men in good standing with the Anglican Church could hold public office, could serve in the military, could attend university. The governing philosophy of this culture derived from the polity of the Anglican Church, strict hierarchy descending from the top. And according to Reverend Forrest Church, it was a polity held predominantly in the tidewater regions of Virginia and the Carolinas, as well as in New England with its Calvinist traditions. Opposing this governing philosophy were the liberal ideas of John Locke, as advanced by Thomas Jefferson. That government be entrusted to the governed, or in the case of larger populations, to those elected by popular vote to speak for the governed. Reverend Church proposes that support for this philosophy was predominant in the Middle Atlantic states, which were more religiously tolerant and had a diverse culture, and with the settlers of the western frontiers, for whom self-reliance was their key to survival. Of course, these philosophies overlap in the governing processes written into the U.S. Constitution. Each man gets one vote. Each man decides how to use that vote based on his experience, his self-interest, and his moral foundation. And now, in the 21st century, we've opened that vision to include the experiences and the interests and the moral foundations of women and the descendants of slaves, as well as displaced Native Americans and immigrants from other cultures. It is this moral foundation, informed by religious belief, that I'd like to dwell on for a bit. Maya Angelou writes, "People will forget what you said, and people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." In the end, the appeal for our vote is an appeal for our emotions. And Carl Jung wrote, "If our religion is based on salvation, our chief emotions must be fear and trembling. If our religion is based on wonder, our chief emotion will be gratitude." So, will the successful political campaign offer up fear or gratitude? The predominant Christian theology in America is one where Adam fell from grace by allowing Eve to entice him into eating an apple. They were banished from earthly paradise by a punitive God. That fall from grace was then redeemed by the crucifixion of Jesus and the risen Christ. And this theology was a foundation of the church created by the Council of Nicaea. The Council of Nicaea was called by the Emperor Constantine to standardize Christian theology so that the principles of Roman administration could be applied for a more efficient franchise. The remnants of that power structure is known in Christian churches today as the episcopal polity, in which ordained priests control the church, typically with a leader elected by the priests. Other polities include the presbyter, which is led by non-ordained elders, and the congregational, which allows each congregation to decide its own course. Regardless of the form of polity, the theology of salvation prescribed by the Council of Nicaea presumes there is one all-powerful being who will decide the ultimate fate of individuals. Those raised under this theology are held in check by the thought that bad behavior will result in eternal damnation by the supreme being. After all, look what happened to Adam and Eve and Senator John Stone. It is no wonder that people live with fear and trembling as a base emotion. In my work, many people refer to this model of eternity to describe their fate. some with confidence, some with hope, a few with despair. Yet as a model for faith, it is all they have known, all they have ever known within their communities, and they presume it to be natural. But Carl Jung provides an alternative model for eternity. This is one in which we respond to the universe with awe. It is with wonder that we see the beauty of nature unfold before us. It is with astonishment that we look at photos from those orbiting satellites of objects in the universe we could never dream of visiting. As we investigate the physiology of the living world, we are amazed how life manifests and perpetuates itself. We begin to place ourselves not at the bottom of a powerful hierarchy, but in the midst of a transformative flow of energy which concentrates at our birth and releases at our death. And we become grateful for that brief span of consciousness that we get to experience. And perhaps we become hopeful that once the concentration of our bodily energy dissipates, our conscious energy will continue on. This is how I choose to read the story of Adam and Eve, as the dawn of human consciousness after eating from the tree of knowledge. And they were not cast out by a punitive God, but led out so they could now see themselves as distinct beings in a living world. It is a spiritual path followed by many indigenous peoples around the world, and they live not in fear, but in gratitude. Grateful for the abundance of life that provides nourishment and well-being. And as our life passes away from us, we are grateful for having known the experience. So how does all this bring us to this year's celebration of our independence? The last 40 years have been a growing abscess of divisiveness in our politics. Fears have been manufactured and manifested by all parties to win the loyalty of their members and the votes of those who are indecisive. What's been building since before the days of the Tea Party has come to a head, culminating in the most inhumane piece of legislation this country has seen since Jim Crow. It is a race to determine who will be the least fearful leader of our community. Lies are spread. Disinformation and misinformation are euphemisms. They are lies. We are told that those who take chainsaws to federal relief programs are better decision makers than the single mother who must choose between buying her own medicine or food for her infant. At the end of every day, at the level of everyday living, relationships are damaged and broken. Anger is spawned, distrust between neighbors, friends, families are cultivated in a world driven by greed. In the world we envision, one informed by gratitude, relationship is our most precious possession. So I'd like to explore some of the dimensions of how this political ecosystem has damaged our communities. Now, I've settled on 3 categories of reasons for our wounded relationships. You may find more, you may find others, but this is what I've come up with. There are circumstantial reasons. We disagree on the policies and the data that informs those policy choices. We presume that we're working towards the same goals. We may disagree on how to solve the problem. We may get our data from different sources, or we may disagree on the conclusions of that data. We can also disagree on the candidates and their qualifications, their integrity, and their experience. Evaluating people that we meet is a skill developed as we mature. A candidate for leadership will play up their strengths, their opponents will highlight their weaknesses, and we often don't have all the information that we would like to have, but our instincts can help us decide who we will trust more. And these two reasons have historically been the challenge points in every political election. For decades, we've disagreed on this level and come away with our relationships intact. But now we have something new. We live inside our own media bubbles. We stay inside them too long. With so many choices to source our information, we tend towards those sources that reinforce our own beliefs or that make us feel less fearful. The result has been that we no longer draw different conclusions from the facts, but we use different facts to create our own truth. Living in different truths erodes the trust that we need for healthy relationships. There are also philosophical reasons. There is a philosophy that says government should be minimal, reduce interfering with people doing what they want to do. This kind of laissez-faire approach is preferred by free market capitalists and entrepreneurs, as it reduces the barriers to new business development. It's also favored by libertarians who believe that individuals should not be intimidated by government regulation. The downside fear is that those with power who do not take moral responsibility for the welfare of their communities often thrive at the expense of those communities. A second philosophy is that government should provide for the least among us and create an equal playing field. This philosophy is founded on the teachings of Jesus, that we must care for the least among us and provide for their welfare. It depends upon the redistribution of wealth based upon the premise that wealth is never the result of individual effort and therefore must not accumulate to one entity that has an inordinate amount of power. The downside fear is that individuals will spend more time gaming the system than actually adding value to their communities. The third philosophy is that government should be a balancing agency between those who want to live simply and those with great aspirations. Think of the individual versus the corporation, labor versus capital. Adam Smith wrote that corporations exist to support the common good. But when corporate shareholders and stakeholders, the common good may be differently understood. Government becomes the form in which differences can be settled. It is incumbent in this model that all parties have equal access to the decision-making process. Now, these political philosophies are studied and debated as the underlying understanding of our American form of government. Political parties attract supporters who agree with whatever platform they stand on. At our highest levels, differences in philosophy have resulted in epic political battles. But the individuals held high respect for each other. As an example, I offer the relationship between Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan. However, in recent years, there's another philosophy that's been seeping in to the national conversation, and that is that there is no reason for government at all. Anarchy is everyone for himself, formless government, which often descends into chaos. It's an unsettled state in which power is most often attained through violence. Anarchy is almost always resolved by monarchy, which then devolves into tyranny. Then there are existential reasons for the separation, for the differences. Demographic changes are threatening the entrenched power structure that was built on racial, ethnic differences. In 2004, I was on a business trip to Australia, 2004, and there I read a newspaper editorial exhorting white people to have more babies because the brown people were outnumbering us. It seems the writer was very concerned about that, and that the white power structure would be weakened and the colonial world would collapse. The U.S. Census Bureau predicts white-skinned people will be a minority in 2045. New York Times recently published data that white males without a college degree have experienced a notable decrease in their wealth-making capacity compared to college-educated women of color. Segments of our inherent racist society are in full rebellion. These are deep fears that are just now starting to be addressed. Another existential reason is that concentrated wealth is disenfranchising masses of people from being able to make decisions for themselves. The vast majority of people are feeling a loss of control over their lives due to the concentration of wealth in a few hands. Available medical care is determined not by medical professionals, but by the actuaries working for the insurance companies. Available pharmaceutical therapy is determined not by physicians, but by pharmacy benefits managers. Available health benefits are a collaboration between your employer, who wants to cut costs, and your insurer, who wants to maximize profits. Where you come into that equation? Anybody's guess. Global supply chains affect the cost of entry into industries as well as the global labor market. Automated customer service. I could go on and on about that. Things that were once free must now be paid for. The CEO of Nestle's Corporation says that people should not expect free potable water. Shouldn't expect to live without cost. Okay, it seems I've strayed a little bit from my original thesis, and I'm going to bring us home by reflecting on how UU values can help us to heal our wounds and bring us back into balance. Because our values center on love, and love is the power that brings us together. So no matter how large the breach in your valued relationship, love will help in its restoration. First and foremost, you must be able to express what you value about your relationship, acknowledge the wound, and suggest a path to reconciliation. If the differences are circumstantial, offer your friend humility and speak honestly. Seek common ground. On Friday, I was marching in a parade in Egg Harbor, wearing my clerical collar and this Side with Love stole. I was walking with the indivisible group and the folks who were protesting No Kings. And several people made remarks supporting Trump and all. And I would say, it's okay. We love you too. After all, isn't it all about the love? And they looked away. There's a dialogue from the series West Wing. I'm sure you remember West Wing. It's between President Bartlett and Senator Lobel. Bartlett begins, he says, "We agree on nothing, Max." "Yes, sir." "Education, guns, drugs, school prayer, gays, defense spending, taxes, you name it, we disagree." "You know why?" "Because I'm a lily-livered, bleeding-heart, liberal, egghead communist." "Yes, sir. And I'm a gun-toting, redneck sumbitch." "Yes, you are. Well, we agree on that." Our philosophical differences are the playing field for political debate. It helps to be able to speak to a basic understanding of why we have government. I'm not a political scientist, and there are advanced degree programs that enter into all the nuances of politics. But not many of us are political scientists, and yet we're asked every 2 years to evaluate the political philosophies of our candidate, either consciously or unconsciously. Sometimes I wonder whether the candidates can even articulate their basic political philosophies beyond taking the stand that brings in the most money. But identifying the playing field is always the best way to begin. But this brings us to our deepest wounds. Our existential differences are driven by our deepest fears and our most profound moral understandings. Many of us are unconscious of these fears, and yet when they are called upon in political rhetoric, we respond. In the progressive world, we are cognizant of the need to transform our communities so that every individual has a chance to thrive. The conservative world will drag its feet to keep us on the rails. It is a good, solid tension. But there are those so firmly embedded in the hierarchical realm of salvation theology that they will resist existential change with all they have, who are so stuck in the stories that define our culture that they cannot tolerate the thought that they must accept new knowledge from any other source, who are so entrenched in the unearned privilege and power that they have received by the chance of their birth, that they must invoke the authority of God to justify themselves. And they are so amoral in their faith that they have no qualms retuning the bass notes of our culture so that they can hold on to power. They play the song of damnation and salvation as if it was the song of the universe. We, as Unitarian Universalists, are playing a different song, one more tune in the awesomeness of a creation we have yet to imagine. We are committed to rebuild our culture on love-centered values, telling stories of a loving God and original grace, and by proclaiming profound gratitude for the universe we find ourselves in. We offer transformative ideas and attitudes based on an envisioned hope for a world where justice and equity coexist. We are tolerant of all responsible belief systems. We recognize the abundance this world offers, and we are generous in its distribution. And we value all life as cohabitants of this planet, not just as resources for our own use. Reverend Channing writes that religion is awakening love in its purest and most disinterested forms, that training our whole being to that fullness, harmony, and beauty, the union of which constitutes perfection. Religious communities are institutions where we form and keep our vision of perfect community. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. held up the beloved community. Jesus taught us to pray, "Thy kingdom come on earth." Our ideal community where every living spirit can develop fully and thrive is here, in this place, at this time. We do not wait for someone to save us. We do not wait for some imagined heaven. We do not wait for a time beyond time. We simply strive to awaken to the world that we are in. It's now time for us to proclaim our values in the public square, to counter the stories of dominance and obeisance. It is time for us to offer a narrative of abundance and restoration as an alternative to the narrative of scarcity and retribution. A rejection of a world controlled by a dominant few in favor of a world where each spirit can thrive in fulfillment of its own destiny. An ancient Hindu prayer reads, "Yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow but a vision. But today, well lived, will make every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every vision, and every tomorrow a vision of hope." We are a faith of wonder and love, proclaiming our vision of love. Let us live well every day. Let us embrace Manethonquat's vision of life, believing in itself, where we look each other in the eye without fear, but with wonder. This is how we heal ourselves, our relationships, our communities, our world. This is the path that leads us to the land that already is. Are we ready to set out on that path? Are we ready to make it so? Yes. So be it.